There you go. That is your warning. So in order to continue, you have to accept. I mean, if you want to, everything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law. Okay. So this week's class is a little bit of a deep class, but on the other hand, it's very, very, very an important class. I'm going to put on Do Not Disturb on my phone because somehow I always need to be reached. And when we're giving a class, so I got to do that disturb. And so now we're going to get started. Okay. So in the previous lesson, we covered an important topic, and an important topic was the concept of overpowering negative feelings. Those negative feelings that we said we always have the ability to refocus. We can, because the emotions are a result of our intellect, and because of that, we always have the ability to refocus and to remain positive. That was a previous lesson, which we see in the screen. We invested our minds in tangible positivity. But today we're going to do something different. In today's class, we are going to discover spiritual awareness. So that's the word spirituality is usually kind of a hocus pocus kind of word. It's like a mystical kind of whatever that's supposed to mean. So what does spirituality mean? How does it apply to our times? But before we go on, anyone, what do you think of the first class, the meditation techniques? Anyone use it? Anyone think about it? Did it come back to mind throughout the course of the week?
It kind of did. It kind of did. I mean, I didn't think it was all that relevant, but then again, I enjoyed that. I felt I learned something, and I felt it was something worthwhile.
Baruch
I
Hashem.
felt I learned something from that. So I thought
actually, you just reminded me something in the appendix. I think it's appendix B of tonight's class. So one of the exercises, one of the rabbis writes, is in order to, this exercise in spirituality, but he says the exercise is to become more aware of what you're thinking. Sometimes we don't realize how many negative thoughts we're having, and then when we pay attention, and then when we're aware of the negative thought we're having, then we could change the channel and focus on something that's positive. Marilyn, did you get a chance to watch class 1?
I did. And I found it very useful. I've been going through a challenging time, and I kept getting stuck in a negative cycle. And the class really helped me make choices about what I wanted to be thinking about. So it was very useful to me.
Baruch Hashem. I'm happy to hear. Okay, so in this class, we're going to go a little bit deeper. And use meditation to get a little bit past the surface, a little bit deeper into our conscious thoughts, beyond our conscious thoughts, and access was deeper. So like the last lesson we said on the screen, we invested in tangible positivity. Now we're going to go to a little bit spiritual awareness. Okay, so let's begin with the exercise on page 38. If I say spirituality, what comes to mind? How would you define spirituality? See, it's a hard word, huh? How do you or how might spirituality be experienced? Hey, Michael J. Okay, so I'm going to turn on the camera. Okay, so I'm hoping that's going to show on the
religious feelings.
Oh, religious feelings. Oh, did you You don't have you don't have a printout of
Yeah. You send out printer?
I sent out a PDF. You want me to print it out from the printer? You want to follow on your phone? You follow on your phone?
Where do I follow on my phone, Rabbi?
Do you have the email that was sent out this morning? In the email sent out this morning, there's a PDF.
Okay.
Do you see it? Michael J. Yeah. Know the email? Hold on, let me see.
Right.
What?
I had
Oh.
a
A lot of emails. So let me see if I can find. Marilyn, you have the book?
Yep.
All right. So whoever hasn't gotten the book, also here. So click here for. So Ellen, I'm putting it on the community chat. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. No, I got it. You're a student. Blah. Okay. Let me just get a pair of glasses and
I see. Okay. So you got okay. All right. So usually when people think of spirituality, they think of something religious. Marilyn, when you think of spirituality, what comes to mind?
I think about connection to God.
Also
I don't.
religious in
I'm
nature.
sorry.
Michael J, what do you think of when you think of spirituality? Pop out.
Yeah. because I like to be spiritual,
There you go.
but not religious.
Exactly. Okay. That's what we said. The exercise, on page 38, which is kind of what that means. It actually, in 2005, there was a study or research done, and they found 27 different different definitions for spirituality. Reminds me of the famous joke. This new rabbi comes to a temple and he's hired. And the first Shabbos, he gives a speech about keeping kosher. The president of the shul comes over to him after services. The rabbi says, "So, what do you think?" Says, "Rabbi, you speak very nicely, but I don't know. The subject matter wasn't so good. So why not?" He says, "Because not everybody keeps kosher. And it might offend people in the synagogue." He says, "Okay." The next Shabbos, he spoke about Shabbat. The president comes over to him and says, "Again, you spoke very nicely, but I don't know. Again, very touchy because not everybody keeps Shabbat." He says, "Listen, I'm not looking to offend anybody. So if I can't speak kosher and I can't speak about Shabbat, what could I speak about?" The president says, "Speak about Judaism."
Mhm.
Right? Spirituality is kind of that same thing. It's okay. So one thing we know for sure, right? I think I have to click on the screen again. So one thing we know for sure, right? That the world is dominated by material things, right? The world is dominated by what we can touch, what we can see, what we can feel, what we can hear, and our body's 5 senses. That's our method of dealing with reality. And most of the time, if we can't experience it with our 5 senses, then we say it's spiritual, right? It's something on that. Now, aside from that, which is the natural impediment towards experiencing spirituality, we live in a society which puts an emphasis on material things. How much you have, how much what you do, and where did you go on vacation, and what kind of car you're driving, and so society is always putting a stress on material gain and success. Now, living a normal lifestyle, we'll call it normal today. It's only natural that we put the focus on the material needs and the drive for success and the drive to have more stuff. Meaning, it's not natural for regular people. I don't know, present company maybe excluded, but it's not natural for normal people to pursue spirituality. The natural drive is to pursue material goods. It's only usually a little later in life when we spend all these decades pursuing stuff, and afterwards we have a midlife crisis or something. We turn back and we say, "Okay, what have I accomplished?" And then we say we want something more. But the natural the way a person is created and formed, baby, teenager, and all that is just, I want to feel good. Yeah, we actually live in a very much of a feel good society. And if we all read the fable, The Emperor's New Clothes. So in modern day society, if you can't feel it, you can't sense, you can't touch it, then it doesn't exist. But we all have kind of spiritual, non-tangible experiences, right? For example, when you see an awesome view, you can't put it into words, and you take a picture, and you show it to your friend, and you're like, nah, that exactly. It doesn't do it. And the birth of a child, you're like, it was amazing. My brother's brother-in-law, when his first baby was born, goes outside. This story happened like 25 years ago. Goes outside the hospital to have a cigarette, turns to my brother and says, "Oh my God, that was the hardest thing I've ever done." The whole experience, so the exhilaration of a baby and all these different types of things, we understand that there's an experience that's beyond tangible. That's the point I'm trying to get. Before we use the word spiritual, there's an experience. There are things we can appreciate that are, you listen to Rachmaninoff, you listen to Beethoven's 13th. I mean, you can't put it, tangible. You can't express it, and you go to see these massive paintings. Cheryl and I, we just had a good time. We went to Europe to see these paintings that are. You take a picture, but you can't. You have to be there in the aura. You gotta smell it. Okay, so we know without all these examples, we know there's our experiences that are beyond the material. So tonight's class is going to answer the question: how do we experience those things? How do we get in touch with spirituality? How do we develop a sensitivity towards spirituality? So in order to understand how to get in touch and to develop a sensitivity and awareness of spirituality, first we have to define and learn what spirituality is, because we definitely got to do away what everyone thinks spirituality is. Then we're going to bring in what the Torah says, and we're going to go about a few ways how to experience it. First, we're going to do one that is not necessarily the Chabad philosophy. And then we'll spend some more time on the Chabad philosophy, which many have found to be a lot more attainable and for the common man. Okay. So far, by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. Marilyn, if you're shy, Ellen will show you. Okay. Esther's here. Is Esther on the class? No, not yet.
I don't
Okay.
see her.
No, not yet. No. Esther always asks questions. Okay. So first of all, remember last week we spoke about the Kabbalah of you. You remember, and there was the intellect and the emotion, and we said there's the soul, and we gave the example of the phone, right? So there's the hardware, which is your apps on your phone, and then there's the interface, which was the way the apps express itself. So you have your soul in the way that it expresses itself. So instead of getting all macro in the world and spirituality, let's go back to you, because when you understand you, you'll understand the world. Because as it says in Kabbalah, a person is like a mini world. So just like you have God has free choice and created the world, you too, you have free choice. You're your own little mini universe. When we get carried away, it's called narcissism. But in reality, you're your own little mini world. All right. So if I asked you, maybe if you have a pencil or a paper, or you want to type it on your phone, if I asked you, exercise on page 39, record as many words as possible to accurately describe you. Write down as many things come to mind. I'll give you 10 more seconds. Different words, different adjectives, the description. Let's go. If you want. All right. Are we ready? Okay, we'll start off with Michael J. Words to describe you. Go. Nice.
Redneck. Heat.
Can't hear what he said.
He said,
But they were all.
you can't hear him?
No.
No,
Because I'm using the mic. Actually, I have a good mic. I'm using the mic from there. Yeah, because I cut out. I'm not using the phone because it's too far. Now the camera's closer, and hopefully, we've been having lagging issues. So we're hopefully, if we cut out another device
Mhm.
on the broadband, so it'll broadcast better. All right,
And parent.
all
It
right,
should have been first. Go ahead.
all right, Ellen. Let's use some descriptions.
I don't know. A wife, a mother, a grandmother, a friend.
All right, Marilyn. What about you?
I think I interpreted it differently. Words to describe me, I have assertive, kind, realistic, empathetic, and unpretentious.
Okay, so between the three of you, we've all kind of done. There's things that you do, right? And there's things that you are. So we all can understand. There's a lot more to you than just what you do and what you are, right? There's a lot more. Okay, so to get a clearer image of what you are or who you are, let's go back to the beginning. All right. In the beginning, when Hashem created the world, and let's go to we'll start with day number 3. Okay, and then we'll go day 3, 4, and 5. And then we'll go to day 6. When God said, let the trees bring forth vegetation, what happened was immediately upon God's decree, the trees came out of the ground and fruit was on the trees. They didn't have to wait until fruit grew. And when in the 4th day, when God said, let there be birds and fish, sorry, that was the 5th day. 4th day was the sun and moon. In the 5th day, when God said, let there be birds and fish and fowl, so immediately coming out of the water, there was living, existing beings. Immediately, the fowl just came out of the ground. On the 6th day in the morning, when God said, let there be animals, the animals came out of the ground alive. They were created, animated, vivified, alive. The human being, on the other hand, was created differently. If you look at text number 1 on page 40, you'll see over here a very important distinction. That first Hashem created the form of the human being from the dust of the ground. And only afterwards, and he breathed into the human nostrils the soul of life. So this is not just a difference in the story and poetic license. Over here, you see, the reason why animals are very comfortable, we don't see any animals going to psychologists complaining about their mother, right?
I don't know what they do on their spare time.
You don't know what it's just for time. But one thing's for sure, animals seem to be very comfortable with themselves. They don't seem to have any inner turmoil.
Sometimes too comfortable with themselves.
All right. They seem to be doing just fine the way they are. Human beings, we don't seem to be comfortable. We're always trying to figure ourselves out. Why is that? Because Chassidus explains there's a conflict. The animal was created body and soul together, so their whole existence is in sync. Their animating force was giving them life, and their vessel for life, which is their body, are totally in sync. Because the human being was created body and soul, and they're two distinct entities, so there's a constant conflict between the two, and that's why we have all these psychologists. We're taking all the money, right? Like the old joke. What's the it says says, what's the difference between a psychiatrist, psychologist, and neurotic? What was it? So it says one builds no, a psychiatric patient, a neurotic, and a psychologist. So the neurotic builds houses in the air. The person who's psychotic lives in the houses, and the psychiatrist charges rent, right? So the fact of the matter is that we have this conflict because we have a double consciousness, this dual consciousness. So everybody is very, very familiar with our body consciousness. You know, that's very, you don't have to explain to somebody that you have to eat. We're all driven to feed our own interests, and we all want pleasure. We all pursue honor. We all seek survival, and we're naturally inclined to perpetuate ourselves. Our bodies are formed from the earth and are naturally drawn toward anything that's earthy. Chocolate cake, bagels, lox, and cream cheese. No, power of Cholin, right? And why? Because just like an animal is concerned with its own survival and perpetuating its own existence, that's how we share a commonality with animals. In fact, Chassidus calls this force for self-survival and self-indulgence and self-perpetuation and to follow your impulses an animal soul. Not because we have the same soul as an animal, but because we share the same. In that way, we have the same common interest. Animal wants to feel good. The body wants to feel good. Right? So it's not natural to go exercise, for example. It's natural to sit on the couch and eat. If it was natural to exercise, then then the gyms would be open. All right. So again, any questions? So far, so good?
Yeah.
So far, so good? Okay. All right. But what's the soul? So last time we had the soul, the intellect, and the emotions, and we used the phone app. All right. So the soul is like this. The soul is not it's not what it can do. It means the soul is beyond. So, for example, you have the phone. Is the phone the apps, for example? No, the phone is an amazing computer. The apps is something that's installed on it.
Mm-hmm.
So the same thing is the soul is way beyond, way holier than its character. So, for example, you have what you are, and then you have what you can do. So what do we know how holy the soul is? Look at text number 2. We say this every day as soon as we wake up. My God, the soul that you placed inside within me, this is page 40, is pure. You created it, you formed it, and you breathed it into me. So now, so what is this? So this soul, forget about its character, how it's subdivided into how it expresses itself, because character is how you express yourself. The soul is a pure part of God, and it has its own consciousness and its own purpose. And what is the purpose of the soul? The purpose of the soul is to connect with source, and the purpose of the soul is to find the source, meaning godliness and everything. Let me show you something.
Here you go.
It didn't come to us. I'm a bad teacher. All right. Many times the analogy given for a soul is a flame. It's an old Havdalah candle because it hasn't been used. All right, now the soul is always searching for meaning. Soul is always searching for meaning, and the example of a soul is always given a flame, as you see in text number 3. Now, look at the flame for a second. You notice? I'm going to do 2 things. First of all, notice this. What do you notice, Michael J?
The flame touches the candle, but it's not part of the candle.
And what do you notice now?
It always burns up.
Same spot, it's tipping up,
Tipping up.
even though the candle is moved.
So two things we're going to observe. Number one, wax is hot. Number one, you'll notice the flame doesn't sit still. Flames always jump. And number two, even if I go sideways, or even, let me use this one. I'm all macho, but I don't want to show off for you guys. So even if I go do this, go all the way upside down, the flame is always going to go up. Now, why is that? This is the question on page.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
By the way, student page 41. It's actually my 41st birthday in like 3 weeks. Oh shoot, today's my friend's birthday. Tonight's my friend's birthday, to call them. I have friends who are twins. Their birthday is tonight. Remind me to call them. Anyway, look at the page, look at the question on page 41. In what ways is a flame a metaphor for the soul? Why, we light a yahrzeit candle and we have a yahrzeit board, always with the flame. Why is the flame a metaphor for the soul?
Energy.
Energy. Good. No, what else? Go on.
Heat.
Esther would love this kind of stuff. Heat. Cold heat. What ways heat?
That's an alternative to
Do you want to
energy.
come up?
Think about it.
No? Well, I gave away the answer.
You can tell we don't pay attention.
Ellen didn't say what? No, that was again. So let's focus on them. Look at text number 4. You'll notice that the flame doesn't sit still. Why? Because a candle, you have the wax, and you have the wick, but the flame is being held down by the wax and the wick. But why is the flame moving? The flame is moving because it always wants to go up. The source of fire is up, according to Kabbalah. So the flame always wants to reconnect with its source. So and what's holding it down? What's holding it down is the wax and the wick. But that's why it's constantly moving, because it's fighting to reconnect to its source. And even if we point it downwards, we take something very holy and spiritual, and we try to bury it all the way down, it's not going to work. It's always going to pine upwards, like Alter Rebbe says in text number 4. He says in Netanya, the nature of a flame is to flicker upward, indicating that the flame intrinsically seeks to be part with source above. Similarly, a neshama, a soul, is not just an energy source. Your neshama is not a battery. And then when your battery, a person's battery, after a while you can't charge the battery anymore, right? Let's say time to trade in your phone, right? So it's not just a battery source for your body. And then when that it's more than that. The neshama feels its source and wants to actually separate from its source and be included in its spiritual surroundings. The soul yearns to be connected with God. What's stopping it? The body. Soul wants to learn Torah, for example. Soul wants to do mitzvot, and the body says, "Come, let's eat cheesecake." Soul's like, "Cheesecake." Yeah. So what do we got to do? So we got to become more spiritually aware. So we have to find a way. We have to find a way to look past the default consciousness of the body and come more in tune with what the soul wants. Or, to use more Hasidic terms, we have to try to train our body to tap into that awareness. Because the body is not bad. The body can be taught to appreciate better things, right? You go to a 13-year-old, take them to a museum, show them a Rembrandt. It's like, look at this. I'm like, it's a painting. right? Particularly you take the same guy at 43, see a Rembrandt, and all of a sudden you can appreciate. But I didn't use Rembrandt for no reason.
Stop.
My in-laws actually they went to Israel to visit my brother-in-law. On the way back, stopped in Amsterdam. So he posted pictures on his family chat of Rembrandt. I mean, you look at a Rembrandt, it's like the painting comes to life. But so a person can be taught to appreciate better spiritual things. So the body, I mean, our default consciousness can be taught to appreciate things that are more refined, right? So, for example, we know what art, music, love, right? These are all hints of spirituality. You can't touch love, right? And you can't teach appreciation for good music. Not the trash the kids listen to today. No. Oh, good music, yeah. So the same thing. So the soul is yearning for life, and we use some tools which we're going to talk about tonight. We can teach ourselves instead of being totally overwhelmed by everything that's going around. We can teach ourselves to focus on and tap into what the soul wants. And that's tapping into spirituality. So let's play the first lesson video. I'm going to mute my camera because otherwise the sound coming out of the screen here is going to be picked up by the mic and it's going to sound really, really bad. So first, let me mute this one. Mute it. Working? Okay, well, Michael.
We have two voices speaking to us from within. One voice is our lower order self, Nefesh Bahamis. The Nefesh Bahamis urges us to live a life of pleasure, of ease, getting what we want whenever we want it. The other voice is the voice of the Nefesh Elokis. That's our godly self. That's the self that seeks connectedness with people in love, connectedness with the world and its elements, feeling fulfilled, connectedness with Hashem. Gently close your eyes and just become aware of your inner self, your inner quiet, that place you can escape to, because it's always a place where you have your own sense of self. Allow that special place to be your refuge, that place of inner sanctity, totally protected, always safe. As you step out of that space, become aware of your two inner voices. Listen to the voice of the Nefesh Bahamis. Note what it tells you. It says, you're insecure in this world. You need to shore yourself up. You need more and more and more. Otherwise, you're unsafe. Build walls around you. Wealth. Create superficial pleasures because life is short. The Nefesh Bahamis is the voice of the ego. Now listen to the truer voice of the Nefesh Elokis, the voice that tells you that everything possesses truth and meaning, that your happiness and joy comes from connecting truly to people, to the world around you, by connecting to the inner selves, the soulful center. The voice that tells you pleasure doesn't come from material acquisition. It comes from the smile of appreciation for having helped someone, for the small gift that you give your grandchild, for the blue sky that you wake up to. In life, choose which voice you are going to listen to. It may be that you don't need to have a battle within, a fight between them. You might even be able to transform the Nefesh Bahamis into an ally, giving its energy the capacity to do the right things. But always allow yourself to recognize that your true voice is the voice of the Nefesh Elokis.
Rabbi, what are we
So
supposed to
doing,
be doing here?
your life will be replete
Are we watching a
with
video?
happiness and fulfillment.
Did you not hear the video? You
No,
guys didn't hear the video?
I didn't hear it.
Ellen?
No, I heard it.
You did?
Yeah, it was the meditation exercise.
Okay,
No, I heard the video.
Okay, everything's being recorded, so
okay.
okay. All right. So one thing we know for sure, the body wants more. Right? So now that we're aware of this duality inside of us, and we know that the body wants more. So how do we get more in touch with the soul? How do we get more in touch with spirituality? By not adding stuff, is by subtracting stuff. Oh. So since our inner spiritual voice is silenced by increasing immaterial goods, so what do we got to do? So spirituality is a sum of having less stuff. There's actually a big movement in the United States. They live in minimalist society. They live in these tiny houses, right? And they don't have stuff. It's always a little sad to see. You see these storage places popping up everywhere. Instead of buying less stuff, what do? Let us buy more stuff and put it into a storage facility. So then,
We can pay rent on them.
exactly. So in order to get ourselves, to know ourselves better, in order to identify with the spiritual element within ourselves, and we have to, to get in touch with the spiritual experiences all around us. This is what we got to do. Okay, so tonight we're going to be introduced to two different trains of thought. They're not different and are not totally divorced from each other. Not one is right, one is wrong. Different approaches, and like all things that in Torah, they overlap, but one stresses something more and the other stresses something more, but they kind of overlap. All right. One is called hisboidedus, which is called seclusion, and one is called hispoinenus, which is called meditation. So hisboidedut, boded means seclusion, or badad, the Hebrew root for seclusion, and one is called hisbonenut, comes from the word bina, which means to understand, and to contemplate on a topic. Let's first talking about hispodidus, which is seclusion. So we see, we'll talk about the greatness of hispodidus, and we'll talk about the good that it can do, and then we'll discuss why maybe it's not necessarily easy for everyone to achieve. So, look at text number 5. Avram, the son of the Rambam. Everyone knows of the Rambam, but no one knows of the son, because when your father's Maimonides, you don't really get much airtime. But he was a great man in and of itself, and he writes like this. Text number 5, page 43. He says, "Seclusion, hitbodedut, is the most superior of all the distinguished practices. It is the practice of the greatest saints and the medium through which the prophets experience inner revelation." So before we move on, it's important to point out the differentiation, the difference between loneliness and aloneness. Again, loneliness and aloneness. Loneliness means the person is suffering from lack of connection with people. So he's sad, he's depressed. Aloneness is the choice to be disconnected from distractions, from all the tumult. You want to be alone. It's important because sometimes it could be interchanged, and they're not. They're totally different. Now, what the son of the Rambam is saying over here, that seclusion is not the goal. The idea is not to be alone. Now, we went to Bariloche, southern Argentina. We were staying in a place, and we came down to a lake. And across the lake, there was an island, and we saw, it wasn't a massive island, an island. There's one house there. Now that's called solitude. You go there, and you're by yourself. But what's the point of being alone? Just to be alone? The point of being alone is that you're not distracted, so now you can concentrate and focus on what you should focus on, to move away from the material distractions. And when you're free from all the input of everything going on, the phone. So I had to put my phone on do not disturb. Why? Because we're trying to learn something, and you're trying to focus. So the idea is not to be left alone, not to be disturbed. The idea is to try to focus. But we live, especially now in today's society, we live in a constant flow of stimulation. So in order to be able to focus, you got to distance yourself from all that material self-identification and focus on something more important. We'll call it your inner spiritual self. And that's what Rabbi Shaya Horowitz is known as the Shalach Kadesh. Rabbi Shaya Horowitz was a rabbi, I think he was born in Prague. His biography might be there on the bottom of the page. Is it there? On page 44? Page 44, you might see his biography. So he was a rabbi of many. On the side. He was a rabbi of various European cities, and after his wife passed away, he moved to Tzvat, and he was a student of. He learned the Yitzchak Luria's Kabbalah, and he writes like this. It is recorded, text number 6. It is recorded in the works of various medieval rabbis that seclusion, hispodedut, separation from everything mundane, and pirishut. So you have seclusion, then you have seclusion, separation, and then number 3, deveikut, which is clinging, or practiced by pious Jews. This is to say that when they were alone, they would empty their minds of all worldly concerns and connect their minds with the master of all existence. The famed Kabbalist Arizal, W. Yitzchak Luria, taught this practice is far more beneficial for the soul than study, and that every person should practice this seclusion meditation according to their ability, either once a week, once a fortnight, at least once once a month. So by being alone, and it goes in 3 stages. You got to be alone, and once you're alone, you can separate yourself, because you notice there in the first paragraph there are 3 terms: seclusion, separation, and connection, clinging. First, you got to be alone, and once you're alone, you can separate yourself from everything else. And once you're separated, then you can concentrate and you can connect the state of dveikos, which is unification with God. This is the ultimate spiritual experience. When the soul is free to experience spirituality, it's free of all the stimuli of everyday life, and able to really focus on, like, let's give an example. Why do you go on vacation?
Did I ever go on vacation? I'm always here.
All right. Why do I go on vacation? Why do people go on vacation with their families?
The time with their family away from the day to day.
Because like in a day-to-day life, you're always distracted. You're not putting their focus on what's important. So you go on vacation to refocus on. No, you go away. So there's a very, very nice. What time is it? Getting literate. But I encourage you to read Appendix A, page 63, the various forms of hispodadut, seclusion. Very, very, very interesting over there. Text number 16 and 17. So I think it's actually 3 texts. Yeah, 16, 17, and 18. Oh, so what I mentioned before about silencing the mind, text number 18. Very, very, very interesting. So you first you take notice of your thoughts, and then once you focus on what you're thinking, he says you realize that your thoughts will quiet down, and then you can start thinking about God. Now, this concept of hispodadus, by the way, some of you may be familiar, is a big approach of the Breslover Chassidim. Nachman of Breslov. You ever heard of Nachman of Breslov? Nachman of Breslov is known for being very happy, but his point, you see text number 16, he says over there that it's important for a person to go out into the field and talk to God like you're talking, and just to be alone. You got to be alone. You got to be totally by yourself. And when you do that, you're able to really connect. Now, this is not the Chabad way. Not that it's bad. Well, truth is, Chabad focuses on contemplation. But in order to properly contemplate, you need a little bit peace and quiet. So you want to contemplate in the middle of Times Square. That's a little bit
challenging.
Well, actually, the Rebbe in a talk, he says that in order to contemplate and focus on what you've learned, we'll talk about that later in the class. You can't go do that in Times Square. Actually, this is the word, Times Square. Because you have to find a quiet place. It's one then the other. But so it's but this concept of being alone, it's not something I'm not a Breslover Chassid, so it's not something I practice personally from experience. But there are many great rabbis and mystics and prophets throughout the generations have done this. And they would, by being alone and really getting in touch with the neshama, they would dive deep into the soul consciousness, and they were able to utilize it. And the ultimate, you see, I think it's Appendix B, which is page 70, where it talks about people that were prophets. I mean, in order to be a prophet, for God to communicate with you, you really had to be totally void of all material distractions. But not everybody can reach that level. It's a little bit, it's a little bit transcendental, right? It's up there. And like of Hai Goyin, look at the biography on the side of the page. Hai Goyin he was born in Egypt. That's what he was born in Babylonia. Thing of a different leader, and you see over here, the Jewish people left Israel after the first temple. They went to Babylonia, and even in the rebuilding of the second temple, the entire Jewish population didn't return. There was always a Jewish community there from the first temple times until 1953, when they were exiled out of Iraq for the crime of Israel becoming a country. But we're talking about that the Jewish community there for for thousands of years. Now, the Jewish community there wasn't always prominent. Like in the first temple times, it wasn't prominent. In the second temple times, it wasn't. But after the second temple times, after the second temple was destroyed by the Romans, for some reason, even though they controlled that whole area, they left the Iraqi Jews alone. That's how we have the Gemara. So, but we're talking about for a good 500, 600, 700 years. That's a long time. That community was the most principal Jewish community. So if you describe Rav Hai Goyen was the leader of Babylonian Jewry, which basically means he was the leader of all Jewry. And he writes like this. I just want to give you a background for you. Text number 7. He writes, you may be aware, with page 45, that in the view of many of our great sages, there is a technique for individuals of extremely advanced character to experience mystical visions of the divine chariot. We'll get to that. Actually, you look more about that in Appendix B, but divine chariot, that's Ezekiel. And to gaze into the spiritual chambers of angels and the like. Like I said, I preface this. This is not something I'm familiar with. They would fast for a designated amount of days and place their head between their knees and whisper copious songs of praise to God with their face toward the earth. And then they would have mystical visions. Now, these two works, the Mishnaic sages regarding the great chambers, as minor chambers, this is all well known and was unanimously regarded by all the sages as authentic. They insisted that God performed miracles, just as he did through the prophets. And that God shows them awesome visions, just as he showed the prophets. Now, again, this has to do with prophecy. This has to do with Kabbalistic mystical experiences. This has to do with soul elevation. Now, this is all good if it's done right. The problem is when you tap into this godly, transcendental, levels and everything else. If it's not done properly, it can have an adverse effect, which is why it's written. That's why we don't know it anymore, because it was passed down from Moses to Joshua, down teacher to student. But then, at the end of the second temple, that time period, they saw that people were not of the same quality. They weren't made of the right stuff, and they were worried that not only it wouldn't be done, it would be used in a bad way, in a negative way, against the Torah. So that tradition ceased to be passed down. Maybe it was still passed down by a very select teacher to student, but as a widespread, it actually says somewhere, in the Torah, we have recording, I think it's 55 prophets, 48 men and 7 women. But it says, really, there were prophets. Prophecy means God communicated with the person. The ones that recorded in the Torah are just something that were recorded for all time, meaning it had a lesson for humanity for all time. But it says the amount of prophets were really in the millions. If you look in the book of Samuel, in the book of Samuel, you'll see there's something called over there the school of prophets. That means you can go, I think it's in Appendix B, but Maimonides writes over there that if you worked hard in yourself and you did A, B, and C, and you can merit that some kind of communication. But again, we're talking about something that's up there. You see, the Gemara tells us a story in text number 8 of these 4 rabbis. 4 rabbis wanted to have this mystical, transcendental experience. One of them died. Ben Zoma became crazed. Acher became a heretic. And Rabbi Akiva emerged safely. It says, why did he emerge safely? Because it says Nichnas b'shalom, he entered safely. just for you to immerse safely. That means the whole point of Rabbi Akiva wasn't to have this experience, was actually to bring it back down towards daily life. They just wanted to have a spiritual experience. The point of the matter is that it's what we're talking about over here, text number 876. That's not something applicable to us. It actually says over here, I have a note. This is in a book written in the 1500s by Rabbi Moshe Kedavero, a Kabbalist. He writes why this knowledge was not passed down. But putting aside this whole transcendental experience, just the concept to divorce yourself from the material world, it sounds like, okay, what do you mean? I lock myself in a room and, and I'll just be alone. It's not easy. It's hard to do. I know I try to prepare for this class, and it's hard. As much as I say, okay, I'm not answering the phone, but something pops into my head, okay, I got to do that. I put down the book and everything else. It's hard. It's different. It's difficult, especially when you're so accustomed to constantly being driven by what your body tells you is important. So all of a sudden, turn it off and say, no, now that's not important. It's not easy. So let's try to do something. Let's try to do something a little different. Okay. Now we're going to focus on something which this is the method that Chabad teaches. And you look at page 48, and you'll see that there's a chart there, a figure 2.1. There's a difference. There's hisbodedut, being alone, and that means hisbodedut means you detach from the material world. Come behind over here. Okay, here we go. Bless you.
Thank you.
Hisbodedut is a person's alone and detached. And then now we're going to focus on something called hitbonenut. Hitbonenut is contemplation, and that's based on understanding. And when you ponder and you think deeply about what you understand, then you could develop an appreciation. So it's really for everyone, based on their own level. And this is why it's applicable for everyone, because everyone can learn, and everyone can not just learn and superficially read, and it could be very nice, but you can stop and take time to really think about and ponder what it is you're learning, and then we'll see as we go through the class, you can internalize what you're thinking. Okay. It means you don't have to necessarily practice seclusion to practice isbonenut. Okay, let's go through. Are we a little bit? All right. Yeah, we said that. No, I'm on mute. I'm by mistake muted myself. Okay, let's talk about contemplation. So we learned before that our souls are spiritual, right? And the soul wants to connect with divine, just like the candle. And the divine is beyond the material world. And the soul wants to know God and engage in God's presence everywhere. And understanding the soul will give us a deeper appreciation. So the first thing you got to do is you got to study. You have to study about what the soul is. You got to study about what God is. You got to study about what's going on. But study is not just enough, because you can read a nice book, but the knowledge can remain abstract. It's something nice. In order to really, let's take for example, you have a student who's in med school. They can read all the books, and they can even ace all the tests. Would you let them operate? Would you go to such a doctor?
No.
Why? Because abstract is nice, but you need not the knowledge to remain abstract. You need to bring it down. How do you do that? You have to You have to concentrate on what you're learning. You have to take it from the abstract and to understand it and to make it bring it down to something in your cognition, in your intelligence, makes sense to you. Let's look at text number 9. So we're going to quote various Rebbeim. We're going to quote the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yitzchak Knerson. We're going to quote his father, Shalom Dave Ber. So text number 9. The central foundation of this study of mysticism is to repeatedly spend considerable time in deep contemplation on the subject matter being studied. This is what's called hisponenus, which means to firmly visualize the concept, to analyze it deeply. And like the Rabbi Chaya, the commentary on the Torah says, on text number 10, he says, we say it in the Alenu, you shall take it to heart. This is a commandment to know God. But if you don't, just to learn, just to read it doesn't mean you know. To know means, take to heart means you have an appreciation of God's unity. And not to rely solely because the rabbi said it, because your dad or mom said it, that tradition. That means you have to take to heart. You have to develop an understanding of the divine, and not it should be abstract. But the divine is abstract. So what do you got to do? You have to indicate the last 4 lines, indicating that we must repeatedly, in italics, repeatedly contemplate the concept until it settles in our mind. The term "take to heart" always refers to a matter that requires profound concentration. Look at the word Shema. The word Shema, it's more than hear. In Yiddish, there's hair and der hair. Shema really means, because here you can hear something passing by. You hear. That means your ears are auditory functions are working properly. Listen to something different. It's not hear, O Israel. It's listen, O Israel. Pay attention. That's what it is. We have to love Hashem with all your heart. Hashem is not just asking us to perform something, superficially out of rote. Hashem wants us to internalize it. And how do you internalize something? We were talking about before. When do people realize what's important in life, what's not? Usually, have some kind of experience, and then they realize. So in order to realize spirituality or soul or godliness, whatever it is, that's not something you're just going to see on a poster, on the side of a bus. Something you have to think about. Cognitive meditation. That's what it is. It's a great term. Cognitive meditation. You're meditating on what you understand. Not something beyond you. You're taking something maybe that's initially deep. Obviously, it's deep. Talking about godliness is not, pizza here. So I could use a slice of pizza. Bye. Class is the journey. You're taking something it's deep, but you're bringing it down, so to speak, and you're internalizing. You're taking what's abstract and you're bringing it to life. You're bringing it down to your level. So, the word das, there's chachma, which is conception, conceive of an idea. There's bina, there's contemplation, you think about. The next step is das. Das means application. In the Torah, das also means intimacy. Intimacy means you're one with the person. Here you come one with the item, with the topic. Das. When you're one with it, it becomes a part of you. Let's look at a couple texts, 11a, 11b. That's page 51 and 52. The previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yitzchak Knerson, explains. Hisponenus is an internal dialogue with an idea. Once you study it, and you have all its details, explanations, and commentaries, until we have developed an understanding, the practice of hisponenus is then to mentally analyze the idea to verify whether the understanding is true and accurate. Through diligent meditation, we develop a strong visualization of the soul of the concept, which is the animating core itself. In continuing text 11b, page 52, the Hasidic practice of hisponenus involves actively contemplating a spiritual concept until it expands our creative intelligence, deepens our awareness, and becomes an indelible part of our consciousness. It means that what the Ispainus is aside from, it's not just meditation. Meaning it's not just to understand it deeply. It's not just so you before you understood it, and now you understood it. You understand it very well. Someone asks you a question, you can answer it. That's not what Ispainus is. That obviously is going to happen. Ispainus is to have an emotional attachment with it. It's through visualizing the subject, engaging with it, so you become affected by it. So now, when this topic, and I know a guy, he knows everything about mushrooms. That's his hobby. You ask him something about mushrooms, he gets all animated, starts telling you. But I'm like, I don't know. I go to Walmart, I buy mushrooms. He's like, oh, when he gives the whole Latin term for it. Okay, right. Right. So now the subject matter is not mushrooms, and the subject matter is not the Yankees. That's a class in and of itself. Larry is not on the class, so I can talk about the Yankees. But when the subject matter here is Hashem, and the subject matter is Hashem's presence in the world, and when we said we contemplate on something, we develop an emotional attachment to it. So now we can understand how we can become more engaged in spirituality. Text number 12, the Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe Rashab says, text number 12, page 52. Through honest contemplation with deep focus, a person's soul develops an authentic closeness and attachment with God, commensurate to spiritual standing. So no matter who you are or how much you know, everyone can do contemplation on a godly topic. Not everybody can shut themselves off from the world. It's a skill. It's hard. Everybody can contemplate, and based on something that you know. And through this, one fulfills the mitzvah of the love of God. And now we're going to actually we're going to take a something that the Rebbe Rashab says, a lengthy text. Text number 13 is a lengthy text. We're going to read it, and we're going to read it again. And then we're going to break it down. And we're going to break it down, and you're going to see, you'll unpack the idea, and you'll see that this is what a Ispainus means. You don't just read it, you reread it, and then you analyze the different things you can take out of it, and then you think about it. All right, so take a minute or two, read text number 13. All right, and then I will read it together with you, and we'll unpack everything. What this is from a mimer, Chassidic discourse, from the 5th Chabad Rebbe Shalom Deber Schneerson, in the year 1898. Sefer Memorim, 1898. After you learn it, try to take away key ideas. Let me know when you're done.
Rabbi, I'm going to run, my battery's going to die in about 5 minutes. So I'm just telling.
Oh, you muted yourself. Okay. But yeah, okay, fine. But like I said, the class is going to be recorded, and any questions you can submit. You can email me, rabbi@jewishpines.com. There's also the website. You can follow up with videos and classes and everything else. So God willing, I'll upload it to YouTube. Okay, let's go through it. You ready? Good. Okay, let's go from the beginning. Okay, and there's the exercise on page page 56, 2.3. Let's try to get 3 ideas. We'll go through it together. Let's try to get the 3 big ideas. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Everything exists is composed of matter and energy. Divine energy that animates it, and then there's the physical existence, the matter. As we see in animals and humans, he's giving that example, right? The animals and humans have an animating spirit, animating energy. If the spirit were to leave the body would no longer be classified as alive, and the body would begin to decompose and turn to dust. Okay, so number 1, see on the screen, everything has a soul. Now, why is this? Why would it happen? Because the existence of the body hinges upon the spiritual energy that animates it. The same is true of vegetation. The vegetation also possesses an animating spirit because it grows. Even inanimate objects possess some sort of energy. Science now backs that up. It keeps them in existence and prevents their disappearance. Okay? Good? So based on this awareness, so we come to the realization that what's ongoing and what's giving things life is good. And what decomposes and what is temporary and is only being held up by the crutch of that energy, we'll call that bad, negative. Why? Because it decomposes. So bless you. So the body is really, think about it, is in a state of decomposition. But what's stopping it from just collapsing into a state of both? Oh. So everything. So number 1, everything has a soul. Number 2, oh cool, I didn't know I could do that. Oh yeah, that's right. Number 2, the soul is the source for life. Yes. Okay. Now let's continue. Job said, "From my flesh I can perceive godliness." This means that the human experience informs of our understanding of God. That means it's not something that has to be taught. In your day-to-day experience, you know this to be true. We intuitively sense that we have a life force that provides us with life. And that's our primary identity. And that we're our soul to leave the body, the soul will be inanimate. Obviously, you go into a hospital, you see people there. The body is complete, but they're inanimate. What's wrong? No soul. The same is, it's not only with the human beings. The same is true with everything that exists. The entire cosmos, not only in this planet, in all planets. The entire universe exists because God's spirit says it should exist. The divine light that enforces the entire life that sustains power of all that exists. If it departs, God, so it's not that God said, "Let there be light." That God said, "Let there be." God is saying. God is constantly recreating the world and bringing the world into existence. Just like were a person's soul to leave their body, they would die immediately. There would be no transitional period. So too, were God to retract his animating force from the world would revert to absolute nothingness. Now, if we meditate on this, so what's value? what can come and go. What should we be valuing here? Right? We always say, what's more important, friends or family? Family. Friends come and go. Right? But family stays. Why? Because that's always, or should be always. Right? So the desires of the body, what's important to the body, that comes and goes. We get older, we have problems, right? Like Monty always likes to call it being mature. Right? That's his line, becoming mature. So what should we value? If we meditate on this idea, last paragraph, we realize that the material existence of each entity is entirely dependent on the spiritual force within it, and that physicality is nullified before the presence of the divine light that is the source of existence. This realization will inspire a powerful love. Don't you want to be alive? We already explained earlier that the very definition of every material being is to be alive. The problem is we're giving credit for life to the cheesecake, but that's not what it is. It's the divine energy in the cheesecake. So you can get divine energy from bagel and from cheesecake, whatever it is. We will no longer desire that which exists only superficially and which is in fact passing. Right? How do you know it's passing? When you eat the cheesecake, how long? It's like Chinese food, right? You eat Chinese food, you're hungry 20 minutes later because it's temporary. What you really want is to be attached to something that's true, to divinity that's true, life, and the mainstay of existence. And by the way, this is not only regards to when you're having a religious experience, you're davening or something like that, you pray. This is everywhere. Everything you look around, everywhere. Everything has a divine energy. So you don't have to necessarily go to synagogue or temple, and sway back and forth to have a religious experience. You can have a religious experience. You pick up your cup of water, you make a bracha, and you can use energy to learn. That's a spiritual experience. That's what Chassidus is saying. So life is good. Death is the bagel, right? You eat it, and then you feel hungry, so you eat another bite. But this is not intuitive. This is not obvious. You got to think about this. Because what are you talking about? Cheesecake, good. Spinach, not good. I mean, right?
I like spinach.
I know, but if you had right? Yeah,
I like cheesecake more.
Exactly. There you go, right? Yeah. All right. So if you like, but you like cheesecake, there was a great TikTok or video, whatever it is. Someone sent that this lady, she's a vegetarian. She's trying to say how she doesn't force, her opinions on anyone. Even her dog has adopted being a vegetarian. They said she's going to prove it. She says, I had this disgusting meat over here. And then she has, and they say, I have this yummy salad. You're going to see. So the dog's a dog. Dogs like, whoa, meat. Like, no, dog's a dog. She's trying to push it. Because what we do, our instinct is to do what feels good. That's the way it is. We have to think about it. We have to contemplate. We break it down. So what do we have? The 3 points. What 3 points did you take away? I think we lost Marilyn. Yeah, battery died. So what 3 points did we take away here? Huh?
There's divine energy in us,
In us?
as well as everything else.
So number one, everything has the divine spirit. Everything. Human beings, animals, the inanimate, everything. Now, so there's everybody knows there's more to a person than just. I remember I had a 7th grade teacher. He used to say, human being is worth like $3. When you take the materials, what are you, sand, water? You're worth like $3, right?
90% water, then a few chemicals.
Exactly. Yeah, I guess this is This was the early 90s. So long way, we would adjust for inflation, you know what I'm saying? So right? What do you want? But everyone knows
It'd be $20.
exactly. We'll call it a deal, right? Keep the change. But we know that everyone has a soul. So if you think about it, this way. Let's talk about it this way. Let's talk about experiences. All right. And the exercise on page 56 is very, very positive. Sorry, I'm looking down. The air conditioner turned off. A little more. But look at the exercise on page 56. It's a very, very powerful exercise. Because not only people have a body and soul, everything in the world has a body and soul. Even experiences have a body and soul. So look at that for a minute. I'm going to turn on the air conditioner here in the show, and we'll get to that. Oh, here we go. Oh, the air conditioner's still on. It's 75. I'm yenting away. So
It's menopause.
Ziggy says it's something called andropause. I said, Ziggy, he's been telling me this since I'm 30. Okay, you ready? You looked at the 4 examples. They're not such crazy examples. So what's the body of dinner with a spouse or a friend? No, what's the body? No? Body is the meal.
Eating the food.
Meal. But why? You going to eat? No. Why are you going out to dinner? The relationship. Same thing is this. Same thing is with the discipline. So the body, the act of discipline, right? You take away his phone. Oh no! How could you? Right? Or all this. Go to your room, right? Or I had a parent complain to me recently. I don't know what to do. The kid's watching something else. So I said, limit their exposure. They go to the room. Oh, they have a computer in the room. No. Do you see the connection? It used to be, in the old days, you can't go outside to play. These days, you punish a kid. You have to go outside to play. Right? But what are you trying to do? You're trying to hurt your kid. You're trying, it's actually love. Right? Same thing as gym. The workout is the body. But what are you trying to do? You're trying to be healthy. This is actually the last one that actually is my favorite. Shake hands on a deal. The physical act of shaking hands doesn't mean anything. It's the significance behind shaking hands. It's the fact that we can trust each other, that you have our word. These are just 4 metaphors. So everything in society, you have the body, and you have to take out of it. Look at the screen, right? Yeah, on the screen you're gonna see a painting. So what's this painting?
Hanukkah.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's lines, it's circle, and someone paint. That's what it is. What do you get all excited for?
Because it inspires me.
Oh, so what inspires a person when you look at it? When you look at an art, it's not. You say it's line, circle. Like the famous joke. There's a professor of ethics who was caught doing something unethical.
Yeah, they test it.
So a student asked him next time in class. He said, "How could it be? You're the student. You're the teacher of ethics, and you're caught doing something unethical." So the ethics professor says, "Do you take mathematics?" He says, "Yeah." "Is your teacher a triangle?" I mean, so we can break life down to squares and circles and colors, but what we really understand is there's something that there's a body and soul. So the world, and use Kabbalistic terms, the world is God's canvas, and everything over here has meaning. That's number 1. Everything has soul. Everything, items, experiences. Number 2. Not only see energy is bad, right? Because not only is the soul, the energy behind the person, or okay, without the agreement and shaking hands doesn't mean anything, but you can still shake hands, right? Look at
Well,
world, look at world leader. You remember the old days? You go, no, you're checking. No, no. All right, now. Throw them off the plane. But so the problem with the metaphors, examples, is that the soul gives that the purpose of going out to eat gives meaning behind the dinner. Soul doesn't give meaning. The soul is life. The soul gives life. That's why it's not the perfect example. That means if you just went out to dinner and you're on your phone the whole time, which unfortunately people do all the time, you still went out to dinner.
Yep.
Well,
And they were still together.
right. I always said going out to a movie is the dumbest thing. You're not talking to each other. You're sitting next to, okay, so why don't you go watch the movie at one time, and afterwards you can compare notes of what you liked about the movie, right? The whole idea is to spend time with each other. But that doesn't give meaning. The soul doesn't only give meaning. It gives the soul is life. It's not just a part of who we are. It's who we are. It's the soul is what animates us. It gives us life force. It's what causes the heart to pump and the lungs to breathe and the brain to function. The soul, the body is dependent on the soul to be. And as we see, as soon as the soul departs, the body's no more. Stops being a person. What's a person? A person, a body. You know, the famous. If I talk to you, am I talking to your eyes? Am I talking to your hair? Who am I talking to? I'm talking to you, right? I'm talking to you. Like I told the story a million times. It's worth sharing here again. We're running late.
You need like a big clock that just sits right in front of you.
I have a big clock, but it's blocked out of my chitza. So, like, I quickly did the story where the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, Shneur Zalman, his grandson of Nach Mendel, is on his lap. So he asked his grandson. He says, "Where's grandfather? Where's Zayda?" So he pulled his beard. He said, "That's not Zayda. That's Zayda's beard." So he touched his eyes. That's not Zayda. That's Zayda's eyes. He went to his whole body. Right? That's not Zayda. That's his head. That's his chest. So he got off his lap. He went to the other room. All of a sudden, he gave a cry. So the grandfather went running. So, oh, there's Zayda. Right? So your soul is you. It's not a function. It is you. Now, because your soul is you, not gives you meaning. That's you. I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to your body. I'm talking to you. So then what are you going to put importance on? You know, what's that line? That women marry men thinking they're going to change, and they never do. Men marry a woman thinking they're never going to change, but they do, right? You don't marry a person for their body. You don't marry a person for what they can provide physically. You marry a person. So what are you going to value? You know, you're going to value. Like, let's say, God forbid, a spouse becomes sick or crippled. We say, all right, marriage is over. I didn't get into this for this. No, I married someone I wanted to go skiing with, and that person would be considered a foul human being. Everybody. So what are you going to treasure? You're going to treasure the hot dogs? No, hard hot dogs. Why are you going to treasure cheesecake? Well, what are you going to? Let's focus on what's actually really important. So by contemplating, meaning by thinking deeply, going beyond the veil of what's the impulse, the intuitive thinking, thinking a little deeper, or using his spinus, contemplation, we come to appreciate what's really important, and it's God. And that's why text number 14, Hashem says, "I put before you heaven and earth." We're almost done. Life and death, blessing and curse, choose life. Question is, if I said, here's bleach, here's apple juice, and please make the wise choice. I mean, what's God saying over here? Obviously, we're going to choose life. What's the, because he's not saying over here choose, cheesecake or so my fascination of cheesecake. Right? All right, guys. Michael J is making me salivate a bit, right? So if it was simple life and death, it wouldn't be a choice. Based on we learned today, life means the soul, death means material pursuits. Now that's God has to coach us. Don't just run. Stop, think, because the choice is challenging. Because naturally we value material benefits and pleasures of every experience. And we see the soul, we see the world through the lens of how can it make me feel better? How can it enhance my existence? But those are temporary, those are fleeting. Hashem's saying, stop and think a little bit, and choose wisely, choose life, choose activities that are eternal and soul in nature and not temporary nature. Look at text number 15, what the Rebbe Rashab says. Because the Torah instructs us, love your fellow, please, page 58. Love your fellow. Love your God, because he's your life. When we love ourselves, it's a state of life that our soul provides that we love, because we love your core self. Now, if you love yourself and yourself is a part of God, not automatically you love God, because he's the root of all existence. A guy on the ventilator, respirator, he loves that respirator. When we meditate on the reality of divinity is life, and all life we will desire and love God. Consequently, because we love God and we love what we really are, our true life, our neshama, and our interactions and externality of the universe, eating and drinking, conducting business, will shift from material to embrace the divinity within them. Doesn't mean, by the way, don't understand. Again, I want you to focus on the last line, to embrace the divinity within them. The Rebbe Rashab doesn't mean you don't eat and drink. The Rebbe Rashab doesn't mean you don't have a job. The Rebbe Rashab doesn't mean you lock yourself up on a mountain and you totally divorce yourself from the material life. It's not if you interact with the material world, it's how you interact with the material world. Now you look at the material world as an opportunity to extrapolate, and interact with the divinity inside of them. Let's look at another meditation video. You want to look at another meditation video? You want to go to the key points? Key points? Okay. We'll do the for the sake of the video, for the sake of the lesson, I'll do the video, the second meditation after the key points. This way, whoever wants to stay. So now let's do the takeaway. How can you define, now going back to the questions we said earlier, how will you define spirituality? How might spirituality be experienced? So in the beginning, we thought, spirituality is intangible, all hocus pocus, it's all up there. But now that we learned, spirituality isn't up there. Spirituality, it's everywhere. It's not out there somewhere. It's right in front of you. It's in every interaction. It's whatever you do. So, but what do we got to do? We got to you got to think about it a little bit. So, but why? Because that shift in understanding and perception doesn't happen like that. Something that you have to, like life experience. How do you come to appreciate things that are really important? Life experience. It doesn't happen. You could try to talk to your 20-year-old kid and teach them as much as, right? But so the same thing is the soul perception, the soul understanding doesn't happen automatically. You have to learn, and you have to take time. Take time to think. You have to put time into your day to meditate. Meditate over here means to focus on the true importance of things. And next week we're going to get into more practical, down to earth things. We're talking about soul and God and spirituality. And don't just think about spirituality. There's a great story at the end of the Rosh Hashanah service. The Alter Rebbe turned to his son, the Mittel Rebbe, the Daybear, and said, what intention did you have in the Rosh Hashanah prayer? He said, I thought about the godly cosmos, unification, and everything else. So he turned to his father and said, what do you think about? He said, I thought about godly energy in the podium. Too often we think about we gotta escape. No, you pick an idea. You pick an idea and how can it relate to you, and then go beyond what you see initially and try to say the godly energy and how it can be utilized in a productive way. Right. And you see, by the way, figure 2.2, we're not going to cover it, but this is all research, how spirituality, this is psychology, as backed it up, how the positive contribution of spirituality has to treating mental illness, recovery, and all that. Okay, key points.
Lesson 2. Mind yourself. Reflecting inward to find the divine. 1. We are comprised of a body and soul, each of which has a unique character and drive. 2. The body is driven by material gain, and the soul by spirituality. We all possess an innate spiritual drive within us that we can come to feel and experience. 3. One way to perceive the spiritual drive of the soul is by distancing ourselves from the immediate distractions of materialism. This is the root of Hippodadut meditation. 4. The most effective way to develop our spiritual calling is by learning about and contemplating
It's the sounds.
spiritual
I don't know if
Listenable.
This
Yeah, I don't
meditation
know.
practice is known as Hitbonenut. 5. Just as we have a soul that gives us life and our true
over
identity,
here,
the
sounds
world has
perfect.
a soul that sustains it and is its most authentic identity. 6. We choose life by focusing on the spiritual content of every experience and valuing the divine potential within it.
Okay, so I really encourage you guys to look at the appendix A, B, and C. It's really add about seclusion 16, 17, and 18. Then text 19 and 20 talks about 21 talks about talks about prophecy.
PDF doesn't have them.
Doesn't have it. Okay, so then you got to buy it. Then you got to buy the book. So your book, I think, it's supposed to come today. It's not coming today. It'll for sure coming tomorrow. Maybe President's Day messed that up. Okay, I'm going, for the sake of the video, I'm going to play the meditation. You're welcome to join. Welcome to stay. Sorry. If you have any questions, obviously you can email me. I will upload the class to.
You see the box, flow system resources again.
May affect your audio quality. It's got to be. We got to buy a new computer. It's got to be the computer. Yeah, we're gonna have to buy a new computer.
That one's displaying what this one's running.
This
Right.
one.
That one's displaying what this one's
No,
running.
no. It's running off that computer.
Okay.
Right. Maybe I should do it off this computer.
Try displaying from this one.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll try that next week. And I'll just have we'll share the screen here. All right, here goes. I'm gonna go back. So you guys can. Let's go see the video. This is the meditation. Close the light.
Spirituality means to sense viscerally how meaningful every single moment and item of life is, which means to enter into a relationship soul to soul, and we can do so with everything that we find in our daily activities. So gently close your eyes and just become aware of a source of light in your head, pleasant, warm, inside your headspace, enlightening, animating, and flowing down into your lower body, feeling comfortable and warm. Intensify that light source so it spreads through your limbs, allowing them to feel animated, special, with Hashem's light, that light which is your soul's light. Everything possesses a soul spark. The stone also has a soul. If you peer into the stone and are able to see molecules, atoms, smaller particles even, all these are energies that are manifested. Beneath each of these lies a spiritual force. The spiritual force of a stone is nefesh. A flower also possesses a soul spark, but it's more developed. It's called ruach, allowing the flower to have locomotion, movement, growth, inclination towards the sun. It has both nefesh and ruach. The animal has an even more advanced soul system. It has the nefesh to maintain its physical state, ruach providing it with animation, movement, but also neshama, which provides it with rudimentary communication capacity. And then there's the human being, who possesses all three, plus the level of soul known as chaya, the level of soul that provides consciousness, awareness of the flow of time, present, past, and future, hopes, aspirations, values, beliefs. We encounter all four levels in life. Allow that encounter to be soul to soul, recognizing that everything possesses value, godliness, purpose, and only by relating spiritually to the essence of that soul do we connect meaningfully, live a deep and meaningful life.
So, all right. So everyone is should continue learning online. I'll send out the post email, the postscript. And guys, you guys will always ask questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions before we go? No? Okay. All right, everyone have a good week. Let me edit here.